Hey guys, this is Huge with your six-figure mentor, and today I'm going to give you my spoiler-free review of Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, most anticipated movie of the year, how did it do? It did a whopping $424 million in just 3 days. It crushed it in the theaters. That being said, the two big questions remaining are, number one, why were the reviews so bad? It got a 73 by users, but a 29% by critics. That's Get Hard with Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart bad. The second big question is, how did Ben Afleck do? Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale left some pretty big steel-toe boots to fill with their Dark Knight trilogy. I'm going to go over those two things without giving away any spoilers. And then lastly, I'm going to end it with how I believe this movie fits into the top 10 now theatrical releases of Batman. So that's up next. Stay tuned. So let me start off by saying that I really like this movie. I think you should go see it. It's an important movie. However, I didn't love this movie. There are problems with the storyline, and I'm going to address those. I'm not going to give away any spoilers that you can't know by watching the preview. However, let's be honest, previews these days give way too much of the storyline. I am going to talk about the history of the comic books that this came from, the backgrounds of the characters, and I believe that that's going to help you enjoy the movie a little bit more. I will have a second video that is spoiler full, and that's going to be a business perspective, business lessons from Batman vs. Superman, because a successful movie is a successful business. What went wrong with this movie has everything to do with corporate politics of this movie. So let's get right into it. There were two major concerns that critics brought up in the reviews. The first was that this movie was too dark. There was no humor. Now, I think that this is an invalid argument because I counted there were 7 jokes. There was one delivered by Martha Kent, which was pretty funny, one from Lois Lane, 3 from Alfred, and 2 jokes actually came from Batman. Now, if you discount Heath Ledger and Joker's homicidal rantings, that's more than all 3 of the last Dark Knight movies combined. So I think anyone who criticizes this movie on it being too dark were either A, expecting this to be a Marvel movie filled with bright colored costumes and quippy lines. This was never going to be that movie. Or B, they really liked the 60s Batman. And let me just say, I'm really glad they didn't do that. Now, the second concern was a valid one. They said the storyline was confusing, and it was. That's because this is actually 4 separate comic books that they cram into one movie. So you have a really good Batman movie kind of trapped and half emerging out of a giant franchising machine. Let's talk about the first source material, The Dark Knight Returns, written by Frank Miller. This is one of the 5 most influential comic books in all of comic book history, and it takes an older Batman. He's 50 years old. He's mourning the death of Jason Todd, which was the second Robin. And so it's an older Batman. You can see it in the costume. It's an exact take off of Frank Miller's penciling. Shorter ears and a large black insignia on his chest. This Batman-Superman fight is almost identical as well. Although they updated the armor, it's almost an exact match, frame by frame. They do change the ending though, so it's not going to spoil the movie just by knowing that. The second movie inside this movie is a Superman story written by Dan Jurgens. You see a Doomsday in the preview, and that's the CGI character. He comes from only one comic book, which is The Death of Superman. Now, it was the highest grossing comic book of all time, selling 3 million in one single day. It was a marketing ploy, and it wasn't the most successful stories, I wouldn't say. Also, Batman and Wonder Woman were not in that comic book, so this is a little bit artificial. However, one nice thing about this is Superman has always been a Christ-like character. He's a god living among men, sent by his father as the only son to this planet to be its savior, and of course, he has a death and a resurrection. Now, just because you know this story doesn't spoil the movie either. They completely changed the origins of Doomsday. They completely changed the ending of this book as well. So, however, it isn't as successful because Again, Batman and Wonder Woman aren't in this, so it's an artificial inclusion into this story. The third movie within the movie is a prequel to the Justice League. I didn't like this at all. I've looked at this as completely just a marketing, franchising tool to get us to watch the next trilogy. And however, I have to say, I loved Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She kicked ass. I mean, she was one of the highlights of the movie. Of course, you need Wonder Woman to complete the trinity of the DC universe, which is Batman the Father, Superman the Son, and of course, she's like the Holy Spirit. So that was awesome. However, they should have just cut out the whole Justice League prequel. The fourth movie inside this movie is the Apocalypse narrative. So that includes Darkseid, who is a very powerful Justice League enemy. And of course, you see that because there's a big Omega symbol carved into the earth in the preview. And so these last two do not work that well. Even the Doomsday story does not work that well. I really wish they had shaved about 40 minutes off of this and just focused on telling a great Batman-Superman story, which it does do a great job when it talks about them. And what's the confusing part is all these other elements which don't really have any cohesiveness. And so that's what the critics are talking about. But this is a great movie inside a giant franchising machine. So the second big question is, how did Ben Affleck do? I was a little skeptical when they cast Ben Affleck. I mean, he sucked at Daredevil, and he's a better director and better screenwriter. But for the record, I'm going to say right now, Ben Affleck is the best damn Batman portrayal on screen I have ever seen. So awesome at Batman. However, he's not the best Bruce Wayne I've ever seen on screen. So let me explain. In every Batman movie, no matter how well the fights have been choreographed, you become keenly aware at some point of the Batsuit, used either to protect his identity or his person from injury. All the suits, even in Batman Begins, have such limited range of motion, especially in the neck, you worry for the guy because he can't turn around. It wasn't until the modifications of The Dark Knight that you actually believe a man could win in fighting in a suit. But that's not what the suit was for. In the original 1939 comic book origin story, Bob Kane has Bruce Wayne tell audiences why he wears the suit. Bruce Wayne says, "Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot, so my disguise must be able to strike terror into their hearts. I must be a creature of the night, black and terrible." This is the first film where you forget he's wearing a suit. This is a complete different animal from all the other movies. You feel like it's part of his actual skin, and you're witnessing no less than a demon descending mercilessly upon helpless men. It has all the grace and precision of a cheetah or lion in his native habitat taking down his prey. It doesn't feel like a video game or a practice Krav Maga or KFM fight. You believe Batman really has been bashing skulls every night for the last 20 years. Ben Affleck Batman is the definitive Batman. That being said, Christian Bale gets my vote for the definitive Bruce Wayne. Ben Affleck misses the point of Bruce's Playboy image, which is to serve as a disguise. In the Dark Knight trilogy, we see Bale living lavishly, dating multiple models, attending red carpet events, and frequently seen drunk in public. Outwardly, he looks identical to his Marvel counterpart, Tony Stark or Iron Man. But secretly, it's all just part of a cover. There's a scene in the new movie I will reveal, though it's not a spoiler or essential to the plotline. Bruce wakes up from a nightmare and gets a drink of scotch, walking away from a random woman sleeping in the bed. I guess we're to believe she's a random conquest. The problem with that is Bruce neither drinks nor sleeps around. He's not Tony Stark and he's not James Bond, which is how Affleck plays this. Bruce is actually completely sober and monogamous. He has two great loves in his life in the comics, and sorry Katie and Maggie, it's not Rachel Dawes, either of yours. It's Talia, whom he marries, and Catwoman, both seen in The Dark Knight Rises. So a perfect casting for me would be Bale as Bruce Wayne, but Affleck as Batman. Now lastly, how does this movie rank in the 10 theatrical releases of Batman? I 100% agree with Rotten Tomatoes on all of the 9. The only difference I would say is where I believe this movie places. So let's go into that next. This is how Rotten Tomatoes ranks the 9 films released prior to Batman vs. Superman. I'm going to go over them one by one and tell you where I think Batman vs. Superman belongs. At number 10 is Batman and Robin. Bad puns and bat nipples is what got this 11%. Number 9, Batman Forever. Joel Schumacher dropped the ball. He returned to camp and killed the franchise. It got a whopping 33%. At number 8 was the 1966 Batman movie, the movie, at 71%. This was fun, campy, and a classic. At number 7 is Batman Returns. It is Tim Burton's second installment, and it had an amazing performance by Michelle Pfeiffer. Number 6 is Batman at 84%. Strong performances by Jack Nicholson, a great soundtrack, and an unforgettable Batmobile. This set the standard for decades to come. At number 5, I believe Batman vs. Superman that's where it belongs. Not only is it the best on-screen version of Batman, despite all its problems, it is an amazing movie. Number 4, The Dark Knight Rises. It got an average of 88.3%, which is just below the first movie. This was the third installment, and it had Catwoman, Talia, and Bane, an amazing end to a trilogy. At number 3 is Batman Begins, with an average of 89.5. Not only did this have a reboot of the franchise, completely reviving Batman the Legacy, but also had an amazing Batmobile and a pretty cool suit. Number 2 is the surprise here, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. This is the only animated movie that was ever released on a full theatrical scale, and it got a 90%, so this is definitely one worth watching. Not only does it have an original score, but it also has original story and original villain, and it's got the best Batman voice, period. No gargling, no growling whatsoever. And number 1 is The Dark Knight at 94%. Arguably, this is the best comic book movie of all time. Amazing performances by the late Heath Ledger, and just an amazing movie all around. So that's my spoiler-free review. I hope you liked it. Now it's time to hear from you. How did you like the movie? If you've already seen it, would you rank it exactly where Rotten Tomatoes ranks it, or do you agree with me? So leave a comment down below. I'd love to interact with you. Next week I'm going to come out with a spoiler-full video called Business Lessons from Batman vs. Superman. So you will have to watch the movie to understand that, and so go out there, go watch it, enjoy it. I had a fun time. I'm probably going to watch it 2 more times. So if anyone wants to actually see it again, you have my number. Give me a call and let's go. So hope you like it, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care.